What is up everybody, and today I'm going to show you a bit about Smooth Video Project. For those of you who don't know, Smooth Video Project is a motion interpolation program. What that means in really easy words is like if you have a video which has, for example, 24 FPS or 30 FPS, and you want to convert it to a higher frame rate to make it look more smooth. You can use a program like Smooth Video Project, which uses motion interpolation to create these intermediate frames, so to say. And these intermediate frames are then artificial. They're not there in your source file, so they're just created. And this may still seem a bit vague, but I'll explain it a bit more later in that. First off, I'm making this video basically because I've been asked this a couple of times to, well, how to use the program or how do you even convert something to 60 FPS. And also because there are not many tutorials on YouTube that actually show you how to use some settings in this program. Most of them are either just how to install and the end result. And just giving the settings on what you used is not really helpful when you try to figure it out yourself. So that's why I'm going to show you, well, the program itself and how to use some settings and a bit more in-depth information. And well, if you're interested, you can stick around. So I'll first start. I'll just show you the site, which is open over here, and you can download it. I think they recently updated the layout a bit, at least for the index page, because it looks a bit more nicer than their wiki. You can download here for Windows, Mac, or Linux, and nowadays there's a 30 days free trial, and I think nowadays you can get all the thingies, how's it called, features, but after 30 days you should buy a well, license or just the paid version, or at least if you like it or not. And you can pay with any card you want or something, or PayPal, whatever. So basically you download it, install it. I'm not going to show you how to install it because that's the easiest part of everything. It comes with a lot of stuff like I think some video player called, how's it called? I think you can install it with it, the Media Player Classic. I recommend doing it. It's a pretty nice player, and it's pretty useful I think when you first install it with Smooth Video Project, all the settings will be already done, so you don't really have to worry about that. If you already got Media Player Classic, you can see on their wiki how to make it work with Smooth Video Project, so to say. And it comes with a bunch of other features as well, which I don't really want to show them that much because I don't really use them that often. And it's not really related to the motion interpolation part of it. So anyway, when you download it and install it, we can just dive right into it. And let's see. I don't know if it opens minimized like in the bottom right corner, but I'll see. So anyway, when you have this, how do you call it, this just control panel open, you get something like, probably something like this. I think at the very first, when you recently installed it, you get some settings you can set up, but after that you get something like this. And I mean, the layout looks pretty straightforward, to be honest. You got the settings right here, and here different tabs on, well, different kind of features. So I'll show some features real short because you may like them or not. So you also got things like video frame, auto lightning, the streaming, LED lightning, something for converting online videos, and you also can find them here in the tabs. And the only really thing, well, I think the only things we're going to care about are either the video profiles, or well, the video profiles and the transcoding tab. The transcoding is mostly for just saving the video. In previous versions, if you had the free version, you couldn't save it. so you were stuck with just you could watch this you could watch the video with the video profile you created, but you couldn't save the video. So now you can, at least if you also buy the pro version. Maybe it's just also available in the 30 days free trial. I don't know. So anyway, when you indeed when you first start it up, you'll see something like this, and maybe some options will seem straightforward, and I'll just go over them real quick, and some are a bit more difficult to understand, so that will take a bit more explanation. So first up, as you can see here, I created a cool video profile. If you want to create a new one, just click new and you say, well, another cool video profile, another cool profile. And that's that. So then you can still change the name if you want, or delete the entire preset here. And if you want to see a list of all your presets, you can check it here. Anyway, now when you have your video and you want to do a conversion to say 60 FPS, you first need to check what your current frame rate is on your video. So let's see, I got this sample clip right here, and as you can see, I already done some examples already. But if you want to see what the frame rate is, I suggest using media info because it's a really useful program, so to say, and it shows you pretty much every detail you want to know about the video file. Anyway, as you can see here, it's just the video stream, and you see the resolution, and you see the frame rate, which is 23.976. And this is basically, whenever we say 24 FPS, it's basically this value right here. So 24,000 divided by 1001, so 23.976. So basically, if you say, well, I got this file, which is 24 FPS, and I want to make it 60 FPS, what you want to do is do it times 2.5. And I think that speaks for itself, but I'll just open the fucking calculator if I can. Oh my god, my laptop. Yeah, okay, good job. Fucking grandpa laptop. So if you got this frame rate and you say, well, I want to make it 60 FPS, or maybe we'll do the other way around. No, we'll do it like this. So, like, you want to make it 60 FPS. It's pretty straightforward, but you'll see. Well, now it comes to 59.94, and this is fine because this basically is 60 FPS. Like if you would, so just keep this in mind. If you would do the same for like, you see, you come up with the 59.94, so you're basically doing the same right here. You can also say, well, I don't want to make it 60 FPS or any other value. You can do it times 3, times 4, times 5, or just set it to fixed frame rate. I suggest if you can do the times 2, 3, 4, 5, do that. Fixing the frame rate is a bit, well, it should be similar, but I just recommend to do it like this. Because you will be off by like 0.06, so to say. And 0.06 may not seem a lot, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just do it like this, or if you have, for example, 30 FPS video, which will be 29.97, I think, if you round it, and you want to make it 60 FPS, times 2 then, so it will pretty much be the same. So if it's 29.97 times 2, you see, it's the same value, so that's fine then. Anyway, now we see below that, we see the automatic option selection, or these are the so-called easy options. Yeah, they're pretty, well, straightforward, I think. I say easy because you get some more advanced ones later. And you can choose to do the easy options or the more advanced one. Personally, I use the advanced ones because it gives you more freedom, and you can try more different settings, but we'll see that later. Then you'll see the first the slider, which is says higher performance or higher quality. Well, if you got a potato laptop, you could choose to take higher performance. Else just take higher quality, or well, even if you got a potato laptop, I would still take the higher quality option because that beats the performance in my opinion. Um, yeah, you got these other two settings. First, the optimization. To be honest, I don't think this was well documented for the easy options. I think this has to do because to do something with animation being more, how do you call it? It got some defined lines, you know. If you take characters, they most of the time they have a line around them, while realistic movies they just look realistic, so to say. Oh Jesus, excuse me. So what I want to say is there's not really much difference. I've tried it out. Maybe you see some difference in if you use animation and you check the animation box. Maybe the lines are a bit clearer or whatever. I honestly didn't see much difference, but it could be the source as well. So then we got the artifacts masking. Basically, before I go into what it actually does, I need to explain what artifacts are. And in essential, artifacts are just some errors in your image, so to say. And these errors occur because the program can't give you a proper result for that current part of the object you're in your frame that you're trying to, well, interpolate, so to say. And this may still sound a bit vague, but I'm gonna show some example later of how motion interpolation with this program works a bit. The thing is, the program can't really predict what is in between, like 100% of the time. It can give you kind of, well, sense of what's in between, and it can be pretty decent results, don't get me wrong, but it's not a perfect program, and it probably will never be perfect for, well, at least the upcoming future, maybe. If there's something with artificial intelligence and neural networks upcoming, maybe that will change, but till now, this technology isn't perfect yet, and errors will occur, and these errors are called artifacts because you can see some things in your image which shouldn't be there. Well, you could ask yourself, how do they look like? Most of the time, you can see some wavy objects or some sharp triangular objects. It really depends, or some halos. You can look them up if you want on Google, but maybe I'll show them later because I got some examples ready. Anyway, like I said, the artifacts masking is then, well, I want to make sure that the artifacts are not really that clear, so that the errors won't be that clear to the, well, to what we see. And it does this a bit by what is called masking. And basically masking, I think, if I say this correctly, is by blurring or merging that part with the original frame, so that the artifact doesn't really look that weird, as so to say. It looks a bit more vague or something. And to be honest, I like that a bit more. So than if you say, well, I don't do masking at all, then you'll end up with some. You can end up with some pretty weird intermediate frames, so to say, and that don't really look that nice. And this is all subjective, but I don't really like disabling the artifacts masking, but that's up to you. And basically, how you can keep this in mind as well, if I take the low artifacts masking, it will probably look smoother. And with smoother, I mean the transitions between frames. Um, but then again, if I take, well, the high option, you will probably end up with less artifacts, or, well, less visible artifacts. but the transition between frames will be less smooth. So you can say, well, I take one or the other, or just take the intermediate option, so medium, and say, well, maybe the best of both. And you will end up with something in between then. I don't know if I already said this before, but there are no perfect settings or a golden rule to trying to, convert every single video with one perfect setting, so to say. It's mostly trial and error in my eyes, and some things may work better, some settings will uh, make it look more smooth, while others just create more artifacts. It depends also on what your source is, how big, what the dimensions, so the resolutions of your source is, and all kinds of aspects. Also, is it animation or is it realistic? Most of the time, it's just trial and error. That's for me the way to go here. Like I said before, these are pretty much the easy options, and I don't really use them that often because it doesn't give a lot of freedom. So then you got the more advanced options, so to say, and you got a lot of shit going on right here and can be pretty intimidating. First up, I'll just start with the easy options. Again, you see, well, this one, the frame rate conversion is still the same right here, so you can leave that. The easy options in this part are basically the miscellaneous options. This is basically regarding the amount of processing threads. If you want to use a GPU, you can say, well, duplicate frames removal. It has to do if your source got frames that are, well, like it says, are the same. It will remove one of those if it's so if the first frame is the same as the second one, it will move the second one, for example. I would recommend to not do that, but again, that's up to you. Basically, because then you're just really influencing the original source, and I rather not do that, to be honest. Then you got the processing of scene changes. I think it's pretty straightforward, but you got repeat frame and blend adjacent frames. Even though it's straightforward, I still have an example right here. So let's say you got this frame over here. This is your first frame, this is your second frame, and you see a transition from a character here on the left to hard black. If you say, well, which was the first option, for example, we'll take repeat frame. So if we say, well, we'll do repeat frame, our intermediate frame, which will be in between here, so frame 1.5, so to say, will be similar to this frame because it's repeating. Now let's say if we blend the adjacent frames, you'll end up probably with something like this. And this is not really what I want. I can imagine people may want that, but I personally don't. So that's pretty up to you. It also depends probably on what kind of sources you got, but also on the transitions, like I said. If it's too hard black or to some other kind of scene, it will blend it, and I don't really like that. And then we got in the somewhat more difficult options, and I'll try to explain a few. I don't know if I can explain them all properly. Some descriptions, because if you can see here, if you hover, you see some tooltips. But one or two tooltips are pretty vague, and there's not really an explanation to be found in the manual because the tooltip says the same as in the manual. But I'll try to get over a few options. We'll just start off with the motion vector option. Um, Basically because it's about the whole idea of motion interpolation here, because the whole idea of what they're using is called block matching, and I'll try to explain it with another drawing or illustration, so to say. So yeah, I'll try to explain the idea of before we go into more details about what the motion vector options are, I'll explain a bit about the block matching. So let's say again we got a frame 1 and frame 2. So now we want to say, well, how could we, for example, say what could the intermediate frame be like? And we could take a guess, well, she should be standing somewhere in the middle of the frame, right? If she's here on the left and in the second frame on the right, she should be somewhere in the middle. At least that's what I would think. And how could we do that? Well, for example, we could divide the whole frame up into small blocks, as you can see. And what you can then do is say, well, we could, for example, say, well, does this block, is this block over here? And this block has a size of, it can be, for example, 16 pixels in width and 16 pixels in height. And then say, well, does this block, is this similar to one of these blocks in the second frame? And if so, how could we match it? And that's where the word comes from, block matching. You try to match the blocks in the first frame to the second one. Yeah, so I'll show you, what I think I have this here. Yeah. So basically what you're trying to do then, and maybe I'll zoom in a bit. Yeah. So like I said, you divide it up in blocks, and then you'll take a block over here and you see, well, this, by the way, this is the character in the first frame and this in the second one, but just for simplification, I just put them into one right now. So yeah, you got the old, you can do this for all blocks, but I just had 3 right here just to show you. And you can say, well, this top of the head in the first frame is similar to that part of the head in the second frame over here. And you can do that for the shoulder as well as the hips, etc. for every point basically, every square. And basically what you end up with is, well, I see the square was here, and then in the second frame it was here. How can it be related? Well, basically we could just say, well, draw a line between them, and then say, well, that's the displacement between those two. And that's basically it. You basically draw, and instead of a line, we draw an arrow, and that arrow is basically called a vector. And what that vector does, basically shows you the displacement. Most of the time, a vector is defined as something that has a value and a direction. I don't know if I said that properly, but I think that's how I learned it. And in this case, we're mostly interested in the direction of it now. I think also the value or the how big the vector is, so how long it is also has an impact on it, but we're going to just focus on the direction right now. So as you can see, we can draw an arrow between those squares for every square that's in here basically, and then say, well, we now know that the square moves from left to right in a pretty uniform manner, so to say. And now it's pretty easy to say, well, we know where it moves to, and we didn't, actually, we already knew it should be somewhere in the middle, but a computer couldn't possibly know, right? A computer can't really think like we do, at least not yet. Who knows, somewhere in the future. But anyway, now it knows that this block moves from left to right. So it's easy now to say, well, if it's on frame 1 here and frame 2, at frame 1.5, the computer can easily say, well, this block should be here somewhere. And then we end up with a frame like this. And this is a real perfect result, so to say. Basically because this transition from left to right is also very easy. And most of the time a program can really do sliding transitions and those kind of transitions, like sliding from left to right, or I think zooming as well. Those are pretty much smooth every time because they're relatively easy. So you see we end up with the intermediate frame. So our end result will be like this. Let me zoom out a bit. So we ended up with a new frame. So we went from like well, to this frame with one, this frame two, to something with something entirely new, so to say. And that's pretty cool, actually. So the computer just made it from, well, 2 FPS to 3 FPS. That's stupid, but you know, you get the idea. But that's the whole thing of block matching. You're basically trying to match blocks, and it makes these motion factors, so to say. These, like I said, these arrows are called vectors, and then you end up with this, and that's pretty cool. So the whole thing right here, and what I try to explain is the block matching thing, and you see some options here which have to do with this kind of blocks. So as you can see, the motion vectors grid, you have here the motion vector search algorithm, which works with small blocks of the video frame, which I try to explain with these red squares. So you can choose, well, I'll take a small square with a 12 by 12 pixels or 16 by 16 or whatever. And that's basically it. You should try to think, well, it's not really that easy actually. The thing is, if you say, well, I'll take a small value, you get really small squares and you end up with interpolating a lot more of your frame, so to say. So it can end up with um, maybe more smoothness, but in essential, if you got a high definition source like 1080p and you would do something like 768, it would try to interpolate really small squares and end up with a lot of, well, artifacts. And that's generally not what you want. So if you're looking at your HD source like 720p, I will probably 12 pixels. It also depends again. You need to try it out. That's all the shit I said before. But if you got 1080p, you could try out 14, 16. You can also try 12. But the thing is, you will notice artifacts, and the smaller the grid size, probably at least that's what I noticed. Then again, if the grid size is smaller, it will eventually look smoother because you're interpolating a lot of more squares. Um, so you could just say, well, I'll take 12 pixels and do a bit of masking, which you see here. We'll talk about it a bit later again, but already talked about it. But anyway, or just say, well, I'll take a large grid and then we end up with large squares, and it will probably look less smooth. But then again, it's not as well exact science. So try it out. And let's see what else we got. The motion vectors precision. So I've seen some explanations online on how this impacts your result. Most of the time they say, well, the tooltip says it like this: a higher accuracy in search for motion vectors increases the smoothness, blah blah blah. Higher accuracy dramatically increases RAM. The thing is, normally I would say, well, just take 1 pixel and start with that. Because if you try to have your HD source like 1080p and do a half pixel, you will end up trying, well, have a lot of, how do you say it, RAM being used while it's not really actually necessary. The half pixel is probably better for things like a 480p source or somewhat a bit larger than that. Then again, try it out. But I would start out with 1 pixel just to see what happens. Then you got some other options as well. Search radius. You got different kind of settings like small and fast, small, average, and large. Just right off the bat, I wouldn't use small and fast, but again, up to you. The thing is, how does this search radius look like, or how can I imagine this? Well, it's a bit like this. So, oh crap, let's take this one out. Yeah, let's like this. Okay. So then again, we got the same frame right here. And the first frame is here on the left, and then a bit more to the right in the second one. So, oh crap, no, wrong one. Okay, so let's say it like this. Again, we do block matching, and we see, well, it moved to the right. So we already seen how to do block matching. So we see this block right here matches that block right there, and we draw an arrow in between them. So now, what does that search radius have to do with anything? Well, I'll just display it at first, and maybe it just makes sense instantly, but we'll see. So the search radius, which I drew in a blue square right here, is basically where you can, the motion vector can be, so the purple arrow can be in the range of this blue square. So basically you can go anywhere in between it, but not outside. So that means if you, well, say it can go here, it can see, well, is it here, is it here, does it match this one, this one, this one, this one? And eventually maybe it sees, well, it matches this one, so that's fine. Well, you can imagine if you say, well, what if I take a bigger radius like this? And that's a bit of over exaggerated, but you get the idea. The thing is, if you, for example, have other objects which may be similar to the object which you're currently trying to match, you can end up with these interpolation artifacts. So it can end up with the wrong result. So having too large of a radius is not generally what you want, but it can, if for example your character would be somewhere way on the right, it should be able to match that. So you need a large radius sometimes, but not always. That may sound vague, but we'll see a bit later how that works. At the other extreme, if you have a too large of a radius, you can imagine, well, it will probably never match anything. Or did I say too large or too small of a radius? I mean, it will never match anything. Can I even move this shit? Jesus, it's now too small that I can't even, yeah, like this. If it's too small, you probably won't even match it. So, as we can see, you see search radius, and I have it on average right here. And I think the tooltip also explains it well. The range of the motion vector search limits the maximum length of the vector and the degree of fluidity of the image. The larger the radius, the more likely you get a wrong vector, resulting in more interpolation artifacts. That's what I actually tried to explain earlier. But you got different settings, and I don't know if I already said this before, but never small and fast. Of course, if you have a potato laptop, you can try it, and if it makes any difference at all, that is. But I generally have this on average. And basically, why not large? Because I just told you, well, what if the object is on the far right of the frame? Well, you can also have this wide search, so to say, and it says a last attempt to find the motion vector with a larger radius in case if the regular search did not provide a good enough result. So that is if you have this, let's do back a bit. Let's do it like this. Can I just cancel it? That's a bit too big. Crap. Yep. So if we have this as default or something, oh, let's do it a bit smaller, like this. It's not a square anymore now, god damn it. So like this. And so, well, it didn't find anything, so maybe we should do a wide search and say, well, do it a bit bigger. And now we found something. And I think that's how it works, at least from the explanation that's there. So generally I have that on average as well. You can try a large if you see any noticeable difference, or just the one of the other. Oh, it's not large, it's strong. Again, trial and error. And then you get some, I don't know if I went over these, but You have these degrees grid step size, and while I've seen some people talk about a bit on the forum, um, you can try to do local refinement. And is there a difference between local and global? Not that much, except that the global uses a bit more CPU. But in essential, doing this will probably decrease or well reduce the amount of, again, artifacts or the interpolation artifacts. Um, and that's because this, well, the tooltip already says it probably, but additional refinement of the motion factors, reducing while reducing block sizes twice. So basically what that means, let me try to, wait, did I go back now? Okay, that's fine. So basically if you got your square right here, I don't know if I selected it correctly. I don't know, if you got your square right here, or, yeah, let's say we got the square right there, and then we'll do a, what was it called? A degree grid step. You could try to reduce that, at least that's what I think they mean. Or reducing block sizes twice, so trying to do this. So like this, I think that's half of it. And try to match that block instead. So you can, I think I most of the time have it on local refinement, and again, just try it out. From what I've read, doing global refinement, um, well, increases your CPU load, if I say that correctly, um, but doesn't really improve the image that much or the result. So local can be a good one to reduce a bit of interpolation artifacts. Okay, that's, I think I can put this away now. So now we talked about pretty much every option, except this one with a top course level, and I'm gonna level with you. I have literally no idea what this thing does. Um, literally, the explanation on its own is already vague enough for me. The thing is, I have this on large for some reason. I probably read it somewhere. What it says, for hierarchical search of motion vectors at different levels, different search options are used. Particularly at last levels, more simple options are used to reduce the CPU load. And now comes the fucking, well, my mind breaks from it, so to say, because I can't understand what this following sentence is. It says, the smaller this value is, the larger number of high levels will have the lower options. And this literally breaks my mind. I can't. If someone can explain this in, well, human words, then Jesus, this is not. This doesn't. I can't. I'll skip it now. I can't. I'm just getting crazy from it. So, well, anyway, just try it out. If you see it any different, just let me know because I can't figure it out. Anyway, we'll just go to the rendering options, and that's pretty much the last part of this video profiles part thing. And you see these, you have frames interpolation mode, and you got a lot of different modes, so to say. Um, and most of the time you can try, well, uniform if you want the most fluid result, so to say. Um, if you want to say, well, adaptive, I think this is pretty new, but you have a adaptive mode, which is basically a combination of the different modes, depending on how good the result is. So if you have a decent motion vector or a good one, it will use uniform interpolation mode. If it was it wasn't that good, but it wasn't bad, it will use 1M mode. And if it was worse, it will use 1.5M. And those are pretty well explained in the tooltips actually. I can go over them pretty fast, but they say, well, 1M is the average mode. Only, well, each original frame is used once. I think that speaks for itself. It will just do interpolation and not really that much weird shit else. You got 1.5 M, which is less artifacts, it says. It says similar to 1M mode, but the interpolated frames are closer in time to the original frames, which reduces visibility of artifacts. So basically, if you got your first frame and then your second frame and it does interpolation, it will not be exactly in the middle of it, for in this case, or some. Wait, let me let this example again. Shall we take? Yeah, we'll take this one. We'll just take these out for a bit. So if you take, for example, what was it, 1.5 M, it will be closer to this one than it will be to this one. So it will be probably over here, not entirely in the middle or something, but somewhere over here. That's just a wild guess, but I think that's what I mean. I don't normally use those other modes that much because I normally use uniform or the most fluent one. And then you got the 2M mode, which is basically fuck all mode, because here it says the minimum number of the interpolated frames. For example, if the frame rate is increased up to 2.5, each original frame is repeated twice. So basically, you're not doing that much interpolation. Generally, I would say don't really do that, but again, it's up to you. Try it out. You got this adaptive pattern, which is only available if you choose the adaptive frame interpolation mode. I've already said this before, but if it says it here in the tooltip again, if it's good, if the motion factor turned good out, or well, the calculation was good enough, you can say, well, it's uniform, or you can say, well, it's 1M. And then if it's decent, you say, well, one of the middle ones, and then if it's worse, the last ones. It will make a difference. But then again, I'll normally use this one. Mainly because I don't really care much for these, doing it with the 1.5 M or 2M modes. But that's just pretty much me. But so for this example, we'll just take uniform. Then again, you got the SVP shader. And like it says, an algorithm for interpolated frame calculation that uses two or more source frames and deduce motion factors. Yeah, these motion factors then. You got a lot of different options, and from what my experience and what I've seen, I would rather skip 1 and 2. At least skip 1. Actually, that's the first one to skip. Then you can try 2, but I would skip that one as well, and just go straight for 13. And that's the standard mode, and that is a pretty decent one. You got these other modes as well, which are like 11 and 21 and 23 and 10. Like it says, 13 is a variant of the 11th algorithm without masking, but giving more smoothness with some increase of visibility of artifacts. And while it may have some increase, like I said, I said this before, when you have more artifacts, your smoothness will be greater as well. And it says it's the same as here, so giving more smoothness with more artifacts, but it's most of the time I've noticed when I tried, for example, complicated, I've noticed that when doing that, there's some more weird shit going on, even more weird than I take 13. And maybe I've got time to show you, but I don't know for sure. You just have to take my word for it and start out with 13, and then you can say, well, this looks decent, or this is not really what I want. You can say, well, I'll take a more complicated one, but it's not really well explained on what it does. It says with the most complex masking, but that's basically it. And it can turn out pretty weird. You can try 21 or 11 then, but I would stick for 10 and 13 for now, and then trial and error again, and maybe something else is better for your case. And then you got the artifacts masking, which I already talked about. And again, there's a tooltip that says additional masking of possible distortions of the frame areas with unreliable motion vectors, which is basically what I tried to explain earlier. So wrong calculation, so these errors which are visible in your image. The stronger the masking is, the blurrier image will be. I think that's what it says, and the worse smoothness will be. This is basically also what I explained earlier. Again, you got different options, and you got a bit more flexible options right here. You got disabled, weakest, weak, average, strong, and strongest. I don't know how they relate to the easy options, but maybe weakest is equal to low and strongest equals to strong. Then again, that's a wild guess, but basically, you could say, well, the idea is the same. If we want to say, well, I want the have it still have the smoothness, and a bit of artifacts is fine, or a bit of masking is fine. And I don't want to really see the artifacts, but I don't mind it that much as well. Just a bit of blurring is fine. Then we'll choose weak or average. I think average is the default mode, if I'm correct. The optimal values will be used. Well, okay. And this here also strong can result in appearance of specific artifacts, for example, triple edges. And that's something you can actually also check yourself if you just render the video. And that's basically it for the video profiles. And if you're set with that, it auto saves, and you see all changes are auto saves, and you can revert it if you want. But I think this is a pretty decent one for now. So you got your another cool profile, and if you want to check it before you, well, if it's actually a good profile, you can open your video player. In this case, I'll use this Media Player Classic. If I, yep, oh, my search bar disappeared. So you just open your video player like this. I'll just minimize this right now. And then you just load up your video, so just drop it in there. And just wait for it to fucking open. So basically what we're now trying to do is just see what this profile has an impact on our video. So it's directly applying this this profile then to the video in real time. And that's pretty cool because we don't really have to, oh, let's make this a bit smaller so that we don't get copyright infringement. Oh, that's fucking weird. So yeah, as you can see, it's a bit laggy now because I'm recording and trying to play back, and my like I said, my laptop is already 6 years old, so a bit struggling. Anyway, you can just now look at the result of your profile and see what it actually does. And I don't know if my I don't know if my laptop can handle it because it's really, I think it's lagging. It's reloaded. So if you can't really play back it because you put it low. But as you can see, SVP playing at 59.94, another cool profile. If you want to say I want another profile, you can press here and check one of your others. But yeah, it may seem a bit laggy, but it's actually just playing fine. It's just my laptop rendering, trying to do it while recording is just making it probably too much. But I'll show you what's useful here. You can check it step by step. Here you see step. I'll show you. Well, okay. So let's see if we can. Let's see if we can. Yeah. Okay. As you can see here, it's actually moving a bit. You see. Okay, and here you see something's happening already. You see a bit of the elbow here going to the left. and actually you see all parts of a bit being bit to the left. And the thing is now I got a, oh crap, I don't know if I got this profile now of this one. The thing is when you choose to do disable it, let's see if that will do it now. Let me see this part. Oh crap. Okay, this weird stuff already. Yep, it looks even more weirder than before. And that's basically because I now disabled artifacts masking, and you see some weird shit going on right now. And basically, well, it's doing its interpolation probably, I don't want to say decent, but fine, because you see in between it tries to mimic but what the intermediate frame would be like. But you can imagine when we have a rotational object, the motion vector would be a bit more difficult to calculate than, for example, having this one where we had literally just sliding from left to right, which is relatively easy. So the thing is, you can check it out if you want what all these settings do. But some things are pretty fine because if you check it out, you see these movements of these arms, and you can easily do it step by step here, which is basically frame by frame. And you see some things happening, like the fingers not being visible anymore. So we'll take it to average again, and we'll check again. You see now that it actually looks pretty decent, but you see it a bit fake, and that's because you have the artifacts masking being on average. And even though you see this bit fake, it looks a bit more normal to me, but the motion will still be smoother. So you see this and you see this, and that's basically it. And now you see the fingers normal again because it applied that artifact masking. And that's how I want to see it. And even though you think, well, it got these, it was a bit more blurred, this is actually how I want to see it. It's a bit smoother, and because it got these kind of blurred images in between, it will look smoother, but you won't really be annoyed by the weird fucking things happening, like some fingers disappearing on double faces or whatever. I don't know. It can be real weird depending on some settings, but um, again, this looks pretty fine to me right now. And you should basically try it out with all kinds of different settings. And if you say, well, I'm fine with the settings which I've made right here, and I'm ready for it, you can say, well, now I can load up the video and say, well, take the video which I'm currently playing, or just browse for the video, and then say, well, I'm gonna transcode it in this tab. So you can see here the CPU usage. Even though I got a potato, I try to keep it a bit higher than I would average, but basically it takes a long time to transcode it. And I got a, well, I don't want to say really a potato one, but my CPU is an i7 470MQ, I don't know. And well, I don't really got I don't know if it's a decent GPU, but you got GPU acceleration also on different, yeah, you can choose to do that shit. But the thing is, for me it takes roughly, it took 2.5 hours to transcode a 24-minute video. And for 1 minute, I had these fragments right here, which were only 1 minute, and these took me like 7 to 8 minutes each. And you can calculate, well, that will end up to 2 to 3 hours roughly. So it depends on your computer as well, but I also won't really recommend going to 100% because till this day I still fucking think my laptop fan broke, or because I was running this shit for 48 hours straight or something. Well, I think it's a bit last 36, something in between. At least it was, at least for more than a whole day, and my laptop was so fucking hot. I don't know what happened, so I had to go to the repair shop. But I wouldn't really recommend going to all the way. But anyway, well, not all the way in this sense. If you get my drift, Jesus. Then you can choose to shut it down or when it's done. I generally, when I do this kind of transcodings, I do them in the middle of the night, so I will press shut down when it's done. So my laptop shuts down when all the stuff is done. Pretty useful. And then you got the encoder basic and advanced. Basically, if your source is you have this software which encoder type, I would recommend just taking the same as your source. So let's say if you take media info again and check your file. I don't know if it's visible. Yeah, it says here one video stream AVC. Just press AVC and use software. Anyway, this one is for the HVAC files, but I don't use it that often. I normally have these kind of files. These are more compressed, I think, but not all players can play this, if I remember correctly. And this is not compatible with how do you say it? Web compatible, if I say that correctly. Well, this is. Um, anyway, so if you're looking for web compatibility, Jesus, I would say this. Just take this one. At least I think the default is also this one, but anyway. Then you see quality and bitrate. Generally, it says higher quality bitrate. You will be fine with this, or just take 18. If you say, well, I need a higher bitrate, you can go a little lower. I wouldn't recommend going all the way because you will end up with a large file size, which normally a large file size and a large bitrate, and it doesn't actually mean that the video is also better. You probably wasted a lot of space. So basically, you can try something between 15 and 18, and if you think, well, I don't really need that much of 20 would be fine as well. Generally, I take it something like this, 18, 17, try it out. Then you get the advanced, and you can have some different kind of settings as well. They're pretty similar to this one, but you can say, well, I want to have a more advanced, how you say, settings. And for this, you actually need a bit more about, well, the kind of, how do you say it, encoder. I know these kind of settings because I've played around with FFmpeg before, and it uses this one. The lib extron G64, and you can have these kind of settings. You can set them more if you want, or do some other filters on it. I generally have a slow preset, and maybe if you played around with Handbrake of FFmpeg, I don't know how to pronounce that one before, you probably know these settings a bit. A slow preset means that it's trying to, well, code it slower, but it's most of the time better. And you get these CRR values, which is basically the same here. I've put mine a bit lower. I don't really remember why, but just this is the advanced values section. You can add a lot of more shit if you know how to do it, but and some levels, and the level just corresponds to I'll show it right here. It's not really all that important, but I'll just show you to this thingy right here at L.5. Basically, you will be fine with this for transcoding probably, and just try it out. If you think well, feel courageous enough to try some settings like this, you can. But this is why probably mine took 2.5 hours, because I took the slow preset. I would recommend starting off with this, and then with the profile you created here, with your advanced profile or just your easy profile, depending on what you want. And that's basically it. You just browse for your video. I'll just click here to show you how it looks like. I could have imported it, but directly like here, but if you press it, it will show up if it's, oh, Jesus, it'll lag so much. You see even the icons. Oh crap, it's not responding now. Okay, now you see it's loaded. Now you can choose your profile right here. Just pick the one you want. We got another cool profile and then start. And that's basically it. Then you're done. It will be rendering, and you can pause it if you want in between, if you need to do other stuff or something else. And you see it will convert the 24 to 60 FPS. And I think that's basically it. I'm not gonna run it now because I need my laptop for the shit as well. I think it will crash while I'm also recording. And that's basically it. I think I explained quite a bit. And I don't know if people got any questions or if you can teach me more about it. That's fun as well. Yeah, and you can play around with different kind of settings as well, or if you want to use any of these other options, which I never used before. And yeah, if you're interested, you could buy it. I'm not really promoting this program. It's just it's pretty fun to use. So, and it's not really that expensive. I mean, $25, still pretty decent for two computers it was. And that's it. Now you're basically ready, and you got the basic information on how to use it and how to transcode it, how to play around with it. And yeah, that's it. See you guys later.